Arvin Anderson, welcome aboard.
Yes, I'm excited to be here, Andy.
If you can't tell already, if you're listening to this and you aren't ready for energy, you might want to turn this off. This thing, in fact, where we're going to go with this one today is a topic I love talking about. When you enter a room, either bring energy to it or you suck the energy out of it. You have two choices. So if you're up for bringing energy to the room, you're going to want to listen to this. So Arvin, let's level set, man. If you don't mind taking me maybe a couple minutes for the audience who has no idea who Arvin is, tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, and what makes you tick.
Oh, man. Who the hell is this Arvin Anderson guy anyway?
I warned you, folks.
Man, I mean, I was born and raised in the entrepreneurial world. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I was just always in that space. I mean, even I think I started working for him at the age of 8, just working in his business and just kind of being in that world always. So I've always kind of just had that entrepreneurial mindset and grown up in that experience. And born and raised in Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, which was an amazing place to grow up because of, it's just absolutely incredible to live there, but just the small town community where it's, you're able to create such deep relationships with people. Like everybody knew everybody and you knew everybody on a very intimate level.
Yep. So
it really I grew up in the experience of deep human connection, which has always been an incredibly high value for me. So when I ventured out of Alaska and moved out to Las Vegas, it was a completely different world out there where, building human connection like that on a very intimate level was challenging. It's something that I always kind of longed for the entire time I was there. And I got out of entrepreneurship and worked for corporate America for a while, worked for MGM Mirage, which was it was a cool experience. I learned a lot. I mean, every experience we have, we learn lessons, right? So I come out of that experience seeing what it would be like to live a life under that umbrella. And I just wanted more for myself. Like, regardless of what my life was, I wanted to be in control of it. And coming out of that space, I fell into real estate, and then also simultaneously fell into CrossFit.
Yep. And
started building businesses in both of those areas, and then just really fell in love with CrossFit for a long time, and built a thriving CrossFit business out there for 7 years, and then evolved out of that into really wanting to just start working with more of a high-performing, more evolved mindset. Right? Yep. I really wanted to seek out those people that were really ready to do whatever it takes to get to that next level, but was really struggling to figure out how to do that on their own. And so in order for me to figure out how to really put myself in a position to coach people at a high level, I had to follow that path first, and fell into the world of masterminds.
Yeah, and we're gonna go there today. We're gonna go with two places that are favorites of yours and favorites of mine: mindset and mastermind.
100%.
But I want to go back for a second. When you said, you were an entrepreneur by age 8 because you were working for your dad. Your dad was an entrepreneur. When I hear those stories, honestly, I get a little jealous because I grew up in a family. We weren't entrepreneurs. My parents were both teachers, amazing teachers, but it just wasn't an entrepreneurial mindset type of environment. So at age 8, if you can think back that far, were there lessons you took as a kid watching your dad be an entrepreneur that you think have helped you today?
Ooh, I'll tell you, what's interesting? It's the first belief that shows up for me that's actually not a belief that serves me at this stage. Was my dad worked constantly. Like, he would work long hours and he would be at the store until midnight, and then, come home, and then we wake up in the morning, he was already back at work. So I really started to ingrain that belief that in order to be successful, you have to just grind and work constantly, and you got to sacrifice everything in your life to make it happen. And I really pursued success for a long period of my life with that belief of, if I wasn't grinding it out, I wasn't earning my success, and it wasn't going to manifest for me. And that was the biggest one I really had to break.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Cause I think it's funny. Entrepreneurship has become, it's become really cool in the last 5 years. Right. And what's interesting is I think I watch some people, even people I know, they go from the corporate world to entrepreneurship. And the reason they want to leave the corporate world is they hated the corporate grind. Mm-hmm. But all they've done is now they're in the entrepreneurial world and they're still grinding. And it's like, what did you actually trade? We're slaving away 16, 17 hours a day. And like you said, it's almost like I feel like some people are addicted to that.
Yeah.
Like to be successful, it has to be a struggle. And so I'm glad you brought that up because I think people are addicted. You know, we both know Gary Vaynerchuk. He's been accused for a long time of saying, grind, work long hours. And he's now coming back saying, that's not what I meant. But I think it is, people believe that to be an entrepreneur, have success, it means no sleep and all work.
Yeah, 100%.
But
you're right. Like the playoff. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The playoff Gary V, and that's the important part, right? Is like, but he loves it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he loves that side of it. So if you love it, that's one thing. But if you're doing it from a really low energy kind of place and a low vibration, feeling like, well, I have to do it this way, otherwise it's not going to work. Well, then you're just coming from a very low vibration and going to create results that reflect that.
Yeah, I mean, and vibration is such a good word, because the question I've always wanted to ask you, and we're going to get into the mindset masterminds. I mean, and Arvin and I met in the Fast Foundations mastermind. My question for you is this, Arvin. I've known you for a couple years, and you are just a super high energy dude, which is so cool to see you light up a room. Have you always been that way, or was it kind of stepping into that person, maybe finding your passion that made you just step out into the Arvin we see today?
You know, part of it is influence, right? And there's been parts of that that's come out of me unintentionally, just as growing up in life. You know, my dad is kind of like that way. Like he can walk into a room and light up the room, you know? And I was fortunate enough to be raised by a mother that just constantly instilled praise into me, you know, and really just like helped me believe in myself and believe things like anything was possible. And really just gave me just unconditional love constantly. She still does, which is phenomenal. But it was like, when you talk about the energy that you bring into a room, you know, and I didn't get very intentional about it until I lost it, you know, until I hit that moment in life where it's just like everything had fallen apart and I was just in the darkest time in life that I've ever been, ever. I've never felt more alone, more defeated, more isolated than I did in that period of time. And coming out of that place, you know, really asking myself the question, you know, who do I want to be moving forward?
Yeah.
You know, like who is the man that I'm going to be coming out of this, and being hyper intentional about becoming that man. And then it became down to just a very intense year-long immersion of me working with Amiri, who was the coach that changed my life. We worked together every week. He'd come to my gym and we'd spend 2 hours and we would just do hyper intentional state work, whether it was either visualization or breathing work or like peak state work, which we did a lot of certainty, a lot of confidence, really shifting into the different states that we embody as a person, and then conditioning it over and over and over and over again. And then it was just, you know, like, how do you want to show up? What kind of energy do you want to bring in the room? What kind of presence do you want to have? And conditioning that behind closed doors before that door opened and it was time for me to walk in.
You know, you bring up something I want to talk about, because we're going to get into the masterminds. And one thing I love about masterminds is accountability. And you talked about the energy. Right now, let's face it, you and I are having this conversation on June 30th, and a lot of people got knocked to the ground, right? And there's a lot of people who are not in the best frame of mind. You know, the mindset may be trending towards pessimism over optimism, hopelessness versus gratitude and hope. What advice would you give that person right now who is sitting in that position? Are there a couple tips, couple strategies you would want to give that individual?
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things. It's like, you can tell people what to do, but are you actually doing it? And anybody that knows anything about mindset, I mean, it comes down to simply like, what are you focusing on? Like, where's your focus going? Like, are you focusing on all the things that could go wrong? Are you focusing on the problems? Are you focusing on what might go wrong in the future? Or are you focusing on how you can go out there and serve people, how you can create value, where your opportunities are? Are you focusing on the people in your life that love and support you? Are you focusing on all the things that are incredible about you as a human being? Like, where is your focus?
Yep.
Because that's what you have complete control over. And most people are just like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, but are you doing it? Right? Because if you don't like the way you feel, then it's simply because of what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
So be intentional about changing it.
That's awesome, because it's taking action, right?
Yeah.
It's about you can take all the coaching you want, you can read all the books you want, take all the courses you want, join all the masterminds you want. If you're not willing to take action or not willing to focus on the right things, none of it matters. And so I want to ask you, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this question, but I want to ask you this. You did something during the Fast Foundation Mastermind that I admired the hell out of, man, just to be totally honest with you. But you had set an intention that you were going to sell the CrossFit business. You were going to sell the house in Las Vegas, and you were just going to backpack around the world. And this, we're talking what, 12 months ago?
Yeah, like about.
And I remember when you set that intention, and I, even in my head, I have to admit, maybe in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. And then all of a sudden, dude, house is sold, business sold. Arvin is a nomad. Tell us a little bit about the journey you took to Bali. And if you don't mind, more maybe towards did it do to you from a mindset perspective?
Man, it gave me freedom. It gave me freedom. You know, I asked myself that question, you know, that was the power of the mastermind. It was getting clarity on what I needed to let go of, but more so having the love and support from each and every one of you guys to support me through making the most challenging decision I've ever had to make in my entire life. Because I wasn't capable of making it on my own, or at least I didn't feel like I was. And I don't think we're meant to. But asking yourself the question, right? Like everybody says, like, oh, I want all these things. I want all these things. Like, all right, great. Are you willing to let go of everything? Like, will you let go of everything? And I'm not just talking like material things, like your beliefs, your fears, your identity. Are you willing to let go of everything and stand in that vulnerable space of transition for however long it takes in order for you to truly step into the person you want to be and create the life you want? And if you instantly answer yes, you're not doing the question justice. Like, to sit there and reflect on that and really like tune in to that inner knowingness of you and ask yourself with absolute honesty, you know, are you willing to do that? And when I really dug deep into there and sat with that question, it, in a very like vulnerable and courageous way, it was just like in a trembling way. It was just like, yeah, I am, man. Like, I want it. I want it just as badly as I don't want what I have.
Like, well, that's just it. And I think observing that journey of yours from afar, and correct me if I'm wrong, once you made that decision, based on what you just said, once I realized I wanted it as bad as I didn't want the other option, shit just kind of started falling in place. At least it seemed like it. And so if you don't mind kind of just walking through, because this is such an important lesson. You said you've got to stand in it and go, am I willing to get vulnerable enough to take the appropriate action? Because once you do, guess who's listening? The universe.
Yep.
And it starts putting the right things in your life to make the right stuff happen. So tell me a little bit, like, once you made that decision, what happened? Because I feel like so much fell in place for you.
Man, it did. I mean, it's incredible how much your life can change in a year. Like, when I look back, like you're saying, like, it was just, you know, a little over a year that you had that CrossFit gym. And I'm like, man, that feels like an entire like lifetime ago.
Yes.
I was an entirely different person. Like, my whole life was so different. And it's just like, I can't believe it's been that short amount of time. Like, when you let go and you set your intention, like, in the moment, sometimes it feels like it's not moving at all. But when you can look back in the span of a year, it's like, holy cow, man, did it move fast and did it grow radically?
Yep.
Radically high. And
any lessons you learned? Any lessons you learned on your journey to Bali and just traveling overseas?
Yeah, man, it was. Perspective was huge. Like, to go to these different places of the world and see poverty at a level where you expect everybody to be unhappy. Because if you live that way here in the US, you'd be miserable because you're told you're miserable if you're poor, right? Like, you're told you can't be happy unless you have these things. And so I just remember just being like really humbled by like walking around. It's just like you expected to feel and see pain, and it's like you didn't see suffering. Yep. It's like, no, man, like, they're so happy. They're so happy over here. And it's like, wow, like, you can just be so happy with just because you choose to be. Like, it's one thing to read about it and hear it and think it, but I got to see it. I got to experience it.
Yep.
Like, happiness and joy with what we would consider nothing.
Do you think that's
Powerful.
helped you today? Again, it really hasn't been
Yeah.
that long ago, but do you think it helps you today, even when, we all have those bad days, right? Does it help you
Mhm.
put things in perspective and go, man, there's a lot to be happy about, even on, think about what we're going through right now, right? COVID, lockdown, racial injustice. Does it give you that added little ounce of energy to say, hey, it's you got a lot to still be grateful for?
Absolutely, man.
Yep.
I mean, part of the practice that I've had over these last few years is being very intentional with how I'm feeling. So it's like if I feel any kind of tightness in my body at all, like immediately, I start to breathe it out. I just want that body to feel light and just really like shift that focus, right? Like, what can I be grateful for right
Yeah.
now? Like seriously, like for real, like what can I honestly be grateful for? Like I'm thankful just to have this conversation with you. I'm grateful that I know you. You're an incredible human, man. And
Well, thank you. And this is why, I always tell people to be on my podcast, you have to have one trait, and that's an abundant mindset. And that's why you're on, man. And I'm going to get you lit up here, because here's where I want to go with this. You learned a lot, traveling the world. It's so right. People can be dirt poor, but they're happy. In fact, I think it's, is it Bhutan? I can't remember which country it is in Southeast Asia that actually, instead of their GDP like ours is monetary, theirs is happiness.
Yeah.
They base their country's level of success literally on the happiness of the country, which is absolutely phenomenal. So you come back, you and I are still in the mastermind together, and we're about to go all things mastermind. This is where I need you to light this audience up, man. You are now working with people like Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi. I mean, people that you and I a year ago were looking at like they're up in the stratosphere, right? But here's where I want you to go with this story. When you applied for one of these positions, how many applicants were there? About six. Tell the story. About 600 and some. They were only taking what? Less than 10? How did you mentally get through that process to where you became a finalist and ultimately where you are today?
What a story, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, what kickstarted off that whole journey when I sold everything is I went to Australia and I went to Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins. And it was just like, that was my first step. I'm like, if I'm going to like create the next chapter in my life, there's nobody to guide me through this process better than Tony. So I went to there and I came out of there like a fireball, man, like clarity and drive and passion and love and all the things that you need to go out there and create. And part of that experience, I bought their course KBB, which teaches people how to create masterminds.
Yep.
And being in part of their community, which at the time had 25,000 people in there, they put out auditions to be part of their speaking team. People that have gone through the course, completed it, and started to implement the things that they taught. They wanted them to speak on behalf of the company and their experience. So I auditioned for that. There were 600 people that auditioned for it, and shot it in. Man, it was just like on the spot, random video I just submitted, like when I was just feeling it. I was like in the middle of running. I was in Toronto at the time for a different mastermind that I was attending. And I was running down the neighborhood and I just felt like inspired. I just had like this powerful insight that I just wanted to share. So I just stopped. I was sweating. I was still breathing heavy. And I just like submitted this video. And then they narrowed it down to 50 and I made it to the top 50. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And so then we had to teach something on the next one. It was a longer video and I just did my thing on there and submitted it. And then next I was in San Diego at the time. And I remember I was at this Airbnb and I was laying on the couch and I was just kind of resting in the middle of the afternoon, which I don't even normally do. I just was. And all of a sudden this email pops up and it was just like, boom, you made the live finals. And I was like, oh my God, I jumped off the couch. I'm like, what is happening right now? This is crazy. And so they had the live auditions out here in Scottsdale. So I came out here and there was 24 of us that came out here for the auditions. And then I ended up taking the top speaker spot from the live auditions, which was incredible. I mean, it was literally like all the conditioning I had done in the last few years of really being intentional about my state and about how I want to show up in this room, and lessons that I learned from the people that I've been around about, how to hold presence in a space like that, and play the long game and experience. I wasn't trying to win in the first 10 minutes. I knew this was it was a 3-day experience, right?
Yeah.
So it's like show up powerfully, but just like be present and just like trust, like trust yourself.
Let's unpack that for a second, because I think there's such a teaching moment here that's so important, and I don't want to overlook it. Number one, I'll even go a step farther back. If I remember, didn't you only audition because somebody you knew said they were auditioning? You're like, oh, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it was another woman in the group that I had been talking with on different things. And so she asked me, she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna audition for this. Will you take a look at my video and give me some feedback?" And I'm like, "Audition for what?" And she told me about it. I'm like, "I didn't even see that." I was like, "Well, if I'll look at it, but I'm gonna audition too."
And here you are, ended up being the top one. So 600 applicants, okay? Think about anybody in business today that has a goal. 600 applicants, your goal is to get to number one. We could say that's some pretty big odds.
Yeah.
What would you say from your conditioning, putting yourself in peak state mindset? What were some of the lessons or things you took away from that allowed you to go from there are 600 of us to here I am standing on top of the mountain?
Yeah. For one thing, Andy, the whole process for me, I was just having fun, you know?
Enjoy the
Like,
journey.
I didn't take it too seriously. Like, if I didn't get picked, all right, whatever. I was doing other things, but I was like, how cool would that be? And so I gave it my best, and I showed up as my best self. But I had fun with it. The whole process was enjoyable. And I do want to drop like a little seed because, I love that we can have this conversation about, the universe, and like you put your mind where you want it to be and things will manifest for you. And I love that you brought out how this whole experience started was she reached out to me and told me about it. That's the universe like presenting
Correct.
this opportunity.
Yep.
Because we can fast forward that a little bit, and I got the top speaking spot, and then shortly thereafter I do a podcast with Dean, and him and I just had a great conversation. And a week after that, he invited me out to Scottsdale and had a conversation about they were building the coaching and training department of KBB, and asked me if I wanted to be a part of that. And that was almost 7 months ago, and here I am today. I'm the director of coaching for Tony Robbins and Dean Graciosi's KBB and Mastermind Company, which is it's mind blowing, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's phenomenal.
I love it. Like it's I'm doing everything that I want to do. A year ago it was like, what do I want to do? Like, where do I want my focus to be? Yeah, like I want to be out there coaching. I want to be out there spreading this message on mindset. Yeah. I want to be in mastermind environments. I want to be around high performers. I want to build a team. I want to be in the room with people like Tony and Dean. And it's just like, I knew what I wanted, but I had no idea it was going to show up in the way that it did.
Correct.
And so when it showed up in this vehicles, it's like at first, like I didn't realize it right away. And then I started to see all the things I was doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I asked for. This is exactly what I asked for.
You have that aha moment, that epiphany.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man, it was such a beautiful moment. It's so cool.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, and if you're cool with doing this, would you, now that you are the director of coaching for KBB, would you mind taking a minute describing for the people who have no clue what KBB is? Would you mind taking a minute to talk about it, or what it is and what you're doing?
Yeah, 100%. KBB is Knowledge Broker Blueprint, which is, we basically use this course in our training programs to teach people how to extract their expertise and put it in a mastermind type environment so that they can teach other people the things that they know to help them move the needle in their lives farther and faster than they would on their own.
That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to, and can anybody join that kind of course? If somebody wanted to learn how to do just that, what is the most appropriate way to start that process?
Yeah, I mean, the best, easiest, I mean, the only way to start is to get into the course, right? So you buy KBB, which gives you the blueprint, the A to Z, step-by-step process of how do you actually create a mastermind and launch a mastermind.
Got it. Cool. Well, let's talk about that, because you and I met in a mastermind, and I think we can both agree Fast Foundations changed our lives. Here you are now, focused on masterminds. If I were to ask you simply, Arvin, what are the top 2 or 3 things that make masterminds so impactful? What are they to you?
Man, there was such a relief to walk into a room of like-minded people. I think every single one of us walked into that room feeling like the imposter. Like, I was like, man, everybody's got everything figured out except for me. I just kind of snuck into the room. And as soon as they figure out that I don't have it all figured out, they're going to look at me and be like, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. Get out of here. But no, like you walk in, it was just like, and everybody started to share like what their experience was. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going through that too. That's exactly what I'm going through. And it's just like, yeah, this is what the experience is.
Yep.
What you feel is like your own unique experience is actually what we're all feeling. And when I was able to connect everybody like that and realize that we're all just doing our best to figure things out, man, it just it was liberating. It was liberating. And then just to have the connections, it's just to have you guys that we can call at any time and you just get it, because a lot of the time the people in our lives, yeah, they love and they care about us and they want to support us, but very few of them are actual, entrepreneurs or in this space where they understand what this experience is like.
Mm-hmm.
So to have you guys to be able to lean on and get perspective because you get it, it's just so incredibly valuable.
What about the accountability? Do you feel accountability? For me, I think, I've been a part of several masterminds in the last 5 years, some good, some average, but the ones that have excelled are the ones that have absolutely held me 100% accountable to make sure the big promises, the big goals I'm setting for myself, that I'm taking action on. Do you feel like, especially Fast Foundations, we just talked about the big one you just did. Where do you view accountability as part of a mastermind?
Oh, accountability is essential to success. But what's so unique about the accountability in a mastermind is it's twofold, right? It's like you have the respect of the person running it and you have the respect of your peers. And it's just a heightened sense of accountability because you don't want to let those people down.
Yeah.
And, I remember, when we were in Fast Foundations, Chris pushed me to take a scary action and he could tell I was hesitating a little bit. And he's like, Arvin, I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't do this, I don't even want to know you, bro. Like, don't call me, don't text me, don't email me, don't sign up for my masterminds again. I don't even want to know you. Either you step up and you do it, or I don't want you around me, right? Like, I don't want that kind of person in my circle. And I respected that, I'm like, hell yeah, I wouldn't want me around me either. But I did it, it was scary as shit, but I did it.
Yeah.
It was you needed that. You needed that push.
Well, and you bring up such a good, important point. I mean, I felt the same way. I remember having a conversation with Chris before I even joined, and I go, man, I have no idea if I'm even a fit for this. Like, I don't know if I qualify. I don't know what your requirements are because I didn't see myself, even at that point, maybe I didn't even see myself as an entrepreneur. And then you do walk in and you're like, I'm going to be the dumbest in the room. And they're going to find out I don't actually know what I'm doing. And you're like, wait a second. None of them actually feel like they know what they're doing. And that's so important. And then, like you said, that human connection, I think, because I've been a part of masterminds in other industries, Arvin, and I'll be honest, they're not really masterminds. They're more associations. And I think the power of a mastermind is the connections that go above and beyond the content in the mastermind and the lifelong friendships that you create out of that. I've seen businesses started by people who met in a mastermind.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you talked about the like-mindedness of the people in the room and the feeling that, oh, wow, we're all going through this together. Because let's face it, if you're an entrepreneur, you run a business right now, it can be a lonely world. And you don't have to go it alone.
Mm-hmm. It's a belief around entrepreneurship, right?
Yep.
That is like it's a lonely world. You got to figure everything out by yourself. Nobody's going to do it as good as you do, right?
Yep. Well, and I can tell you, I'm launching, as we speak, I'm launching my complete game mastermind.
Yeah.
And as I do qualifying calls, to answer questions for people, one of the questions, or not even a question, but a comment that I hear a lot that honestly might kick you out of qualifying is when you start sizing up the other people in the room, when you want to know who else is in it. That tells me you don't want to be vulnerable. That tells me that you're not willing to realize that you don't know it all. And if you're already sizing up the knowledge of the others in the room, it's going to be a problem and it's probably not a fit for you, because getting vulnerable is probably one of the most important things in a mastermind.
I think you're spot on. And I think that's the big difference between a mastermind and an association, right? It's the quality of the conversation and the depth of the conversation.
Yep.
Because that mastermind allows you to bring to surface those things that you don't tell anybody.
Yep.
The things that you are scared of, the things that
Yep.
It's the fears, right? Like we keep them internal and we don't speak about them, and then they take our power away.
Yep.
If we can speak it out loud and free it. It gives us our power back.
Yep. Well, I know you're a busy man, so I won't take up too much more of your time, but I do have a couple more questions that I want to take this down just a slightly different avenue for a second, because KBB, it's known as the Knowledge Broker Blueprint. And I remember sitting on that call when Dean and Tony announced it, and it really created clarity for me as a coach, because Tony made a comment that just again, clarified it for me when he said, there are experts. There are the people who've done it and have done it for years. And then there are knowledge brokers. There are the people who know those people, but they know how to translate that knowledge and teach others. Mm-hmm. And that was such an important role for me. So I'd love to know your thoughts on the importance and impact of a knowledge broker, because to me, it doesn't mean you have to be the smartest one. You just have to be able to convey the message and help others learn. What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, 100%. I think we're all knowledge brokers until we become the expert. I mean, that's what it is, right? Like, we want to become an expert in anything. We're extracting knowledge from all the different influences that we can find, and then we implement that knowledge and we become an expert. So regardless of which hat you want to wear, right? Tony's a great example. You get into his mindset work, he's the expert, right? Unlimited power, right? Like, that's all his expertise, which he extracted from other sources. But he writes another book on Money Master the Game, which, like, that's just him extracting information from all the different experts and providing it in the source for people to absorb.
Yeah.
So you're wearing both hats as part of the growth inside of a mastermind.
Yeah. Well, think about one of the most famous books of all time, right? Think and Grow Rich. It was literally just an interview with some of the smartest minds of the world.
Yep.
That's all it was. And so
I love it. I'm rereading that book as we speak right now.
Yeah. And I'm reading The Alchemist, because I just like you did when you went on your journey. It's about trusting the omens, man. The universe is always looking out for your back if you're listening. And so as we wrap
probably
this up,
one of the biggest lessons, Annie, was, man, it was, even when I was like embarking on all of that change, I was still trying to force so much. I was like really trying to make it happen. And there was a couple people that came into my life. The first person that came in, and it was a woman that I'd like kind of started talking with a little bit, and like there's some interest there. And then I remember she told me, she's like, why are you always like working so hard? Like, maybe you just need to pause. And it was in such conflict with my belief system. Like, I stopped talking to her. Like, I was like, whoa, I can't have that kind of influence in my life telling me to slow down. Like, you must be crazy. I got to push harder. I got to go faster, right? I got to make this happen. And then like that kind of fell apart because of that conversation. It scared me. And then somebody else said it. And then another person said it. And then finally, it's just like life forced me to pause. And so I did. I just like chilled out for a little bit. And I stopped like trying to make everything happen. And the moment I just paused and was just kind of present, that's when everything started to manifest at the most incredible rate that I've ever experienced in my life.
That's awesome, man. Sometimes you need to slow down and maybe even take a step back to take 3 massive steps forward.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. So let's finish here, man. I'm going to put you on the spot here. One thing you're a master at, my man, and you talked about it early on in the interview. Before you enter a room, you have 2 choices. You can either light it up with energy, or you can be the one that sucks the energy out of it. But it doesn't mean you are in a constant energetic state 100% of the time. So you talk about getting in a peak state.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get people in a peak state right now. You ready? You want to do it? Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you were to give, if you could do it with me so others can listen, but if you were to help somebody get in a peak state right now, what are we going to do here?
Oh, man, I like to do my 1 through 10 method, Andy.
All right, let's do it, brother.
So we can get to a peak state as quick as 10 seconds. So what I like to do is just count from 1 to 10, and we take that 1 from a real low vibration, and every time you say a number, you say it a little bit louder with a little bit more intensity, and when you get to that 10, it's the full expression of your power, the full expression of your peak state. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. 1,
2, 3,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That, my friends, is how you get yourself in a peak state in 10 seconds. I have to tell you, Arvin, I've tried it. I've done it. It works. If you're listening right now, do yourself a favor. If you have a big meeting coming up, maybe it's with a prospect, somebody that just maybe gets you outside your comfort zone, or you're not feeling it that day, literally do what Arvin just did. Count to 10. Heighten the level of the tone and the count every single time until by number 10 you are yelling, and I promise you, your body will be in a completely different state. Arvin, that was awesome.
I love it. Can I add something real quick?
Yes.
It's Amiri, the coach that I worked with for so long, I still work with them today. You know, one of the most powerful things that he ever shared with me was that a successful person, they know two things before they walk into a room. They know the outcome that they're after, and they know the state that they need to be in to create that outcome. So it is, before I walk into a room, it's like, why am I walking in here, right? Why? What am I after? And how do I need to show up? What state do I need to be in order to create that? And you get into that state and you step in, you execute.
That's powerful, my friend. So Arvin, if somebody, now that they are energized, they're ready to take on the day as they're done listening to this, they wanted to reach out to you to learn more, whether it's about KBB or just get to know Arvin and connect with Arvin, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'm pretty private right now in terms of social media, but you can always reach me on my email at arvin@mastermind.com if you ever have any questions or anything like that. But everything I do right now on social media is predominantly KBB Mastermind focused. Well,
folks, you heard it. This is why I had Arvin on. Number one, he's one of the most energetic dudes I've ever known. Number two, he and I met in a mastermind, and I wanted to talk today about all things mindset and masterminds because, again, if you're listening and you're either in sales, you own a business, you're an entrepreneur, whatever, or however you define yourself, you don't have to do it alone. And you put yourself around others that are going to level you up, that are not going to drag you down, and get your mindset right. Arvin just did an exercise where you could literally put yourself in the right frame of mind in 10 seconds. So going back to what Arvin said at the beginning of this episode, you always have control of your mind. And so take action, take control, and the rest of your future will be laid out for you. If you trust your gut, the universe is going to listen and make sure that the right path is put in front of you. So Arvin, thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you. This is awesome. I love these conversations.
Love it, brother. And you guys know, if you're listening in, remember, when clarity and confidence collide, action happens. Go make it happen today. Take care.